In this world, the heavy armored swordsman is recognized as a defense-focused class, whose main role is to draw enemy attention to himself and thus protect the party's allies. However, when compared to other defensive classes, he shows little versatility and cannot easily adapt to different situations. His greatest and most serious weakness is his extremely low offensive power, which makes his development and training slow and quite complicated. Because of these clear limitations, heavy armored swordsmen have become increasingly ignored and looked down upon by society in general. The class has come to be seen as incomplete, almost like a flawed profession that brings misfortune and disadvantage to anyone unlucky enough to receive it. However, the protagonist Elymas experiences this reality in a completely different way. His path of evolution always seems connected to a strange sense of familiarity. Whenever Elymas learns something new or witnesses events in this world, he has the vague impression that he has already seen or lived through it before, as if memories from another existence are slowly beginning to awaken within his mind. This subtly suggests the emergence of memories from a past life. Intense conflicts and battles of grand proportions arise with completely unexpected frequency in this world. In such situations, Elymas is almost always forced to fight alone against his enemies, plunging into confrontations that constantly push him to the absolute limit between life and death. The pressure of these fights comes not only from high-level monstrous creatures, but also from equally dangerous human opponents, such as extremely skilled mages and experienced swordsmen who master refined combat techniques. Even so, regardless of the type of ability, strategy, or magic his enemies use, Elymas' shield remains unshakable. In no situation is it ever truly broken or overcome, as if there were an impossible barrier surrounding his defense. Still, despite this seemingly abnormal advantage, Elymas cannot understand the origin of the images that continue to appear in his mind. They are disconnected fragments, brief flashes of memories that do not belong to his present, like scattered pieces of something much larger that he still cannot fully perceive. Amid this turmoil of conflicts and doubts, the sacred blessing ceremony for the heir of the Ederv family finally takes place officially. It is precisely during this ritual, at the moment he is supposed to simply receive his blessing, that all of his past life memories fully awaken within Elymas. The revelation strikes him overwhelmingly, leaving him in shock as he realizes that the world he lives in is exactly identical to the virtual reality game called Magical World, which he obsessively played in his previous life. His initial excitement reaches extreme levels when the system grants him the profession of heavy armored swordsman. In the original game, this was a class he always considered not only the strongest in terms of defense, but also one of the most unconventional, capable of withstanding virtually any situation when properly developed. However, this intense joy does not last long, quickly being shattered by his father's explosive reaction. The family patriarch is immediately shocked and soon after is consumed by uncontrollable rage upon discovering that his heir has received a profession considered useless in the eyes of nobility and local tradition. With this rigid and inflexible reaction, Elymas begins to understand that the strategic mindset of that world is extremely outdated and limited. Even while calmly trying to explain that the heavy armored swordsman possesses superior defense, endurance, and survivability attributes, Elymas is completely ignored. His father accepts no argument. Consumed by anger and shame, he even goes so far as to punch Elymas in the face, treating that profession as an unforgivable stain on the family's honor, something that must be hidden at all costs to preserve the prestige of the Ederv. The heavy and suffocating atmosphere of the ceremony is unexpectedly changed by the arrival of Molly's, a beautiful young woman from a secondary branch of the Edervan family. Although she had once been Elymas' childhood friend, they were separated for many years due to the strict status differences within the family itself. Ignoring all judgmental stares, comments, and contemptuous whispers around her, Molly steps forward with determination and courage, asking to undergo the blessing ritual. Even while still immersed in discomfort and disappointment caused by recent events, the head of the Edervan family finally authorizes the start of the ritual. Everything proceeds without any apparent issues, and Elymas' negative feeling is confirmed at the moment the system announces Molly's received profession. She obtains the Sacred Sword class, an extremely respected, rare profession fully oriented toward offense. Molly's does not hide her overwhelming confidence and even subtly provokes Elma, as if she had absorbed all the talent and potential he might have had. Elma, in turn, remains completely silent. His expression becomes more serious and concerned, as he fears that the sudden rise of someone from a secondary branch will only further increase his father's anger and pressure against him. In contrast, the head of the Edervin family immediately shows satisfaction with Molly's result, completely ignoring the family's internal traditions and hierarchies. He makes a shocking decision and immediately adopts her as the official heir. Taking advantage of this sudden change of circumstances, Molly's reinforces her new adoptive father's words and further belittles Elma, stating with absolute conviction that he would never have the ability to take on such important responsibilities. This abrupt change of leadership shocks everyone present, but also makes clear the cruel and merciless logic of that world, where only strength and practical usefulness are truly valued. The most devastating moment occurs when Elma's own father coldly and definitively rejects him, as if he had never belonged to that family. He considers the heavy armored swordsman class an unforgivable disgrace to the Edervin lineage and orders Elma's immediate expulsion from the mansion without any hesitation. Even in the face of Elma Ma's desperate pleas and his sincere attempts to explain the true potential of that class, the patriarch does not back down from his decision and rejects everything with even greater emotional violence. As if that were not enough, he also threatens Elma with death if he ever tries to pose as a member of the family again or use the Edervin name under any circumstance, completely and irreversibly severing all blood ties. That very same day, under a strong and constant rain that seemed to mirror the weight of his expulsion, only the old butler says goodbye to Elma in silence, handing him a small amount of his savings as a final gesture of kindness. From the mansion, Molly's watches the entire scene with a cold smile full of superiority. From that moment on, Elma's true journey as a heavy armored swordsman truly begins a path far harsher, lonelier, and more unpredictable than he could ever have imagined. After losing all his titles, Elma is placed in a horse-drawn carriage and taken to an unfamiliar house, officially beginning his solitary life as an outcast. In contrast to his former comfortable life, the outside world is loud, hostile, and clearly reveals all its harshness. Even after losing his family, his status, and facing society's prejudice, Elma does not despair. He maintains firm confidence because he knows a secret that no one else does. The heavy armored swordsman is, in fact, the most powerful class of all. Realizing that this world has several historical and geographical differences compared to the game he once knew, Elma carefully opens his status screen to confirm whether his class system remains the same. With 5 initial skill points, he finds various random options such as enhanced defense and basic swordsmanship. However, using his strategic experience, he ignores the safer options and invests all of his points into the fixed skill tree of the heavy armor oath, which is usually considered useless and difficult to master. This bold choice pays off immediately, advancing the tree to level 5 and unlocking the fortress counterattack skill, while also greatly increasing his defense and creating a solid foundation for future growth. After that, Elma acquires the specific equipment for his class and begins exploring the world cautiously, staying calm but aware that he must grow stronger quickly. Without wasting time, he decides to enter combat to test his abilities for the first time. His first opponent is Arana, a monster classified as exorcist level. Elma handles the situation calmly and activates his barrier counterattack skill, which converts defense into damage whenever he successfully nullifies an enemy attack. The result is immediate and impressive. With just a single successful impact, the monster is instantly defeated. With that, Elma obtains a level 2 magic stone, a small reward, but an important milestone at the beginning of his journey. Elma hears someone else shouting for help. He runs toward the voice and soon finds an adventurer being pursued. Upon arriving at the scene, he realizes that the forest is completely overrun with a huge number of frogs. Faced with that situation, Elma states that he will handle it. The adventurer, who had been desperately running for his life, asks whether Elma truly believes he can face all those monsters. For a moment, he even thinks Elma is simply overconfident. However, Elma replies that he is not. He admits that he had just leveled up for the first time in his entire life. Upon hearing this, all hope vanishes from the adventurer, since how could he trust his life to someone even weaker than himself? In his mind, it seemed impossible for a beginner to defeat such a large number of monsters. Not even heavy armor would be enough to protect him from so many enemies at once. So he insists that the best option is to flee while there is still a chance. Even in the face of the adventurer's insistence, Elma remains completely calm. He explains that barrier counterattack is far from a perfect skill. As previously stated, the damage dealt by the barrier when blocking an attack corresponds to the user's own defense points. This means his defense must be higher than the enemy's offensive power for the skill to function properly. Otherwise, the effect will not activate, leaving the user completely vulnerable to attacks. Still, the adventurer continues urging Elma to run immediately. However, before either of them can escape, all the creatures rush forward at once and launch their attacks against him. Elma comments that barrier counterattack can indeed become useless and extremely dangerous against very strong opponents or unknown monsters. However, since he was reborn inside the game, he knows each one of those creatures perfectly. Thanks to that knowledge, everything unfolds exactly as he expected. The barrier counterattack completely blocks the attacks from the swarm of frogs, defeating each one in sequence, leaving the adventurer completely shocked, unable to believe what he has just witnessed. He asks how Elma was able to defeat so many frogs and who he really is. Elma begins by answering only his first name, but stops before revealing his surname, immediately remembering the threat that his head would be cut off if he ever mentioned it. Thus, he simply replies firmly that his name is Elma.